Okay, so our last sense is vision, and we actually have 6 videos on vision, so that should tell you how important it is. So hopefully you survived the hearing and equilibrium to some extent. Just understand the basic mechanics about those two special senses. So vision, of course, sight. We're trying to perceive objects. We're sensing them and then perceiving, understanding what they are, and how we might interact with them. And so light is what we call electromagnetic radiation. It's in the visual portion of the spectrum that is limited to 400 to 750 nanometers in wavelengths. If that means something to you. Not particularly important, but this light does cause a reaction by or due to receptor innervation, and so we'll see how that works briefly. Let's cover some anatomy though. We have the eyebrows that of course can look mean with them, but they mainly protect the eyes from glare and perspiration. The eyelids that help to clear the eyes, moisten them, and keep foreign objects out of them. We've talked about the orbicularis oculi, and so we know that muscle's involved here. Eyelashes help keep debris away as well. And then the conjunctiva of the eye, that is a transparent membrane that covers the anterior surface of the eyeball except in the region of the cornea. Okay, so it heals quickly, it's very richly innervated, and if you've ever had pink eye, you know exactly what the conjunctiva is. So here are those structures. We see the cornea. The conjunctiva is going to be right near the edges of the cornea here. We're going to get into these eye muscles just in a second. There's the orbicularis oculi right there. Now for the lacrimal ducts. So lacrimal ducts are located in this position above the eye. They will constantly secrete fluid over the surface of the cornea to keep it from scratching and being damaged, and then it's collected into the lacrimal sac. If you begin crying, though, you can see why you might start blowing snot bubbles during crying. That's always a bad outcome, right? You feel bad enough, and then you have to go around with snot bubbles hanging out of your nose. So they, again, wash out foreign particles, deliver oxygen, and so forth, and contain components of the immune system that help destroy bacteria. Here are the 6 eye muscles in various aspects. So we see in this particular aspect right here, we've got the eyeball turned, so we see the lateral rectus, and then the medial rectus, and then superior to that is the superior oblique that hangs in this little piece of connective tissue called the trochlea. Superior oblique muscle, remember, it's powered by the trochlear nerve, so that's why we call that little point of attachment the trochlea. And then you can see the inferior rectus on the other side of the eyeball. What we can't see in this is the inferior oblique. However, we can see it pictured here in addition with the inferior rectus, the lateral rectus that's cut away. You see the optic nerve, the medial rectus, and then the superior oblique curving in, and then the superior rectus. So those are the 6 extrinsic eye muscles, and you should know exactly what cranial nerves attach to them and power them. And this is a nice little setup on exactly where those muscles are found at in the eyeball. Okay, just a few more accessory structures and look at the muscles. That's all we're doing here, looking at the nerves. So this is a nice breakdown of what nerves are innervated by the cranial nerve 3, 4, and 6 specifically. Okay, you might notice that the obliques turn the eye away or toward the nose. There's tons of orbital fat in here for the eyeball to rest in and sit in and cushion it. The anatomy of the eye is really interesting. What we're going to do first is talk about the 3 layers of the eyeball, and then we'll start looking at the structures that light passes through in order to form an image on the eyeball. And so here we see the outermost layer. This is the sclera, the white of the eye. We'll have more charts on these. I just want to go over it right now. And towards the interior portion of the eyeball, it becomes a transparent structure called the cornea. So 2 major components of this outermost layer, that is also known as the tunica fibrosa layer. You have the cornea and the sclera. The next layer is this brown layer with lots of blood vessels in it, and this is called the choroid. The choroid as we move forward towards the anterior part of the eye, forms the iris, and also an important structure called the ciliary body that you can see pointed out here. So the ciliary body is going to serve as a point of attachment for the lens. And so this is called the tunica vasculosa, this middle layer. And then finally, the tunica interna is the innermost layer that has this yellowish component called the retina. The retina is going to have two other features. It's going to have a centralized component called the fovea, and then also in the retina is the blind spot. So we'll talk about each of these in turn as we go through the next few slides. A couple other anatomical features you should know is the anterior chamber here that is between the lens and the cornea. So this is the anterior chamber right in this region. So this is going to have fluid called aqueous humor that is going to bathe these structures. And then back here we have the posterior chamber that contains a jelly-like substance called the vitreous humor. So the tunics, we began with the tunica fibrosa, as we've already talked about. It's the outer layer containing the sclera and the cornea. The middle tunic will be the tunica vasculosa that will contain the choroid, as we mentioned, the ciliary body, and the iris, which is the colored part of the eye. Okay, and just for your own information, the color in the iris is determined by how much melanin is present, what type of melanin, whether you'll end up with brownish or black eyes versus some other color that may appear in there. The tunica interna then, the retina, the fovea, and the blind spot, which is known as also as the beginning of the optic nerve, and it may also be called the optic disc. And here you see the three layers laid out. The outermost layer, the sclera, that's the white of the eye, which also does encompass the cornea, the choroid, that is the middle tunica vasculosa layer, and it also includes the ciliary body as well as the iris right through here, and then the retina that's going to have a centralized fovea and the optic disc right here.